Welcome to another episode of Questioning Woke Psychotherapy. Just as the title says, I want to talk about how we can understand each other, even when we haven't had the same experiences. This could be a general topic, but I'm including it in this series because I want to address the belief that without having the lived experience of some form of social injustice, we're not capable of understanding someone who has. While this is not an official position of standpoint epistemology or of critical social justice theory, one often hears it declared among those of the woke persuasion. At the very least, there is the belief that understanding is necessarily greatly compromised when one hasn't had the same experiences, for instance, of racism or sexism or some other form of social injustice. Hello, my name is Michael Dwan Herrick. I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach in private practice in London, and I want to describe how it is that we can understand each other without sharing the same experiences or life circumstances. But just because we can understand doesn't mean we necessarily do. However, it is very possible with some effort, which I will explain shortly. Let's start with a working definition for understanding. For my purposes, which are limited to interpersonal matters, it means knowing what others think and feel and why they think and feel as they do. This includes what another wants and needs as well as their motivations for what they say and do. When we know these things about each other, we could say that we have mutual understanding. Another word for this is mentalization or theory of mind. For this understanding to have any depth, I include empathy as part of the definition. We don't simply cognitively know these things about others. We feel in ourselves the flavor of their experience, and we care about the other person. We can and do understand others to a superficial degree without empathy or any inclination to extend care. In fact, such understanding is frequently used to exploit others. That's not the kind of understanding that I'll be talking about. I want to acknowledge what everybody already knows. We can't fully and perfectly understand anyone, not even ourselves. The best we can do is approximations. But it turns out that this is sufficient for all interpersonal purposes, like falling in love, raising children, managing employees, relating with a boss, cultivating friendships, and resolving conflicts with a neighbor. To say that we cannot absolutely understand one another is not to say that we can't understand them well enough. Through tens of thousands of hours as a therapist and a coach, I've practiced understanding people who tell me of experiences that I have not had. For instance, I have not been a woman or been pregnant. I am not gay, nor black, nor have I been raised in an Asian family. I have not served in the military, nor been sexually abused, nor attempted suicide. I have not witnessed a murder, adopted a child, nor been blind, nor mugged, nor done time in prison. I have not been addicted to cocaine, been psychotic, had diabetes, nor lost a child. I could go on and on. If I could not approximate an understanding of people who have had these experiences and thousands others, I could not do my job. I would have nothing to offer. I've had to learn how to understand people as best I can, despite not having the same experiences. My understanding of others relies on four things: my own experience, recognition of shared humanity, an understanding of psychological theories, and my imagination. The only thing I have that non-therapists may not have is psychological theories. As far as I'm concerned, that's the least important. Plenty of understanding is possible without it. We all have our own experiences. We've all been in circumstances, had things happen to us, and encountered challenges, difficulties, successes, and had our needs satisfied and disappointed. We all have a body that feels pain and pleasure, hunger and satiety. We've all been sick and well. Even if we don't have a lifetime disability, we have or will experience some degree of disability, at least temporarily. Ultimately, we will all die, and we know it. We all have a mind that can be lucid, but also confused or fixated on certain thoughts and beliefs. We all experience a range of emotions in response to people and situations that we encounter. We feel fear, sadness, anger, shame, humiliation, resentment, envy, jealousy, and remorse. But we also feel joy, confidence, optimism, love, contentment, pride, excitement, enthusiasm, and comfort. We all have relationships that deliver a great range of experiences, such as love and affection, betrayal, loss, conflict, abuse, exploitation, deception, support, collaboration, and validation. Everything I've just suggested in terms of body, mind, and relationships is part of our shared human endowment. We're born with it, no matter where or when or to whom. This is our standard human equipment. This is what we have to work with. Our own experience provides the ground for understanding of others. It allows us to get in the ballpark and have an approximate understanding of each other. But it doesn't mean we're automatically able to understand each other. To use this resource, we must be willing and able to access and feel the range of emotions that are part of our experiences. For our own experiences to be a resource for understanding others, we have to cultivate our self-awareness and understanding. This is why good psychotherapy training programs are not only intellectually challenging, but also, at times, emotionally grueling. Additionally, we don't share the same formative history of experiences with others. This means that even if a circumstance or event is nearly identical, it will evoke different thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in two different people. It also means that we can't properly understand someone by simply imagining how we would feel if the same thing happened to us. If you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Also, let me know what you think in the comment section. Now, please stick with me to the end of the video. If you're truly interested in what it takes to understand others, I promise I'll give you some important tips. So, if we want to understand others, how can we overcome the differences in our life experiences and circumstances? We can start by thinking of experiences we have had that are similar and what we thought and felt about them. With a willingness to recognize our own experiences and the range of emotional responses, and an awareness of our common humanity, sometimes we can have an almost immediate, approximate understanding of others. Additionally, we could imagine ourselves in the other person's position and notice what that would be like for us. This also might yield an approximate understanding. Yet, whether thinking of our own past experiences or imagining ourselves in the same position, we can still be far off the mark. Instead of assuming that we're correct, we can offer our guess and see if the other person feels understood. If they agree, then perhaps we're in the ballpark. But often a more accurate understanding takes more effort and imagination. Because of how our different formative experiences have shaped us, we need to consider what someone is telling us about their experience in the context of their own history. What else have they lived through? What did they come to believe once upon a time based on their early experiences? What did they learn through their family and upbringing? What have they been taught by their culture or in their education? What did they learn about themselves, other people, right and wrong, how to survive, and the meaning of life? All of this is the filter or lens through which they perceive and process what happens to them. The same is true for all of us, including we who are trying to understand them. To the degree that we are capable, we need to set aside our own filters and lenses and imagine what it would be like to encounter the world, circumstances, people, and events through the other's filter. What thoughts and feelings might that evoke in us, and to what level of intensity? What might we be inclined to do if that was true for us? To the degree that we can do this, we deepen our empathy. In this way, what the other says begins to make perfect sense. We might not think or feel the same way that they do if confronted with the same things, but we can understand how it is that they do. Our access to common emotions provides the link. Even though we might experience fear or sadness in response to the same event, we can understand why they feel anger or resentment instead. Even though we might feel pride, we can understand why they feel shame. Even though we might feel optimistic, we can understand why they feel discouragement. We can also understand why someone would behave much differently than we would. It's important to recognize that there can be a false sense of understanding when we identify very similar life experiences. This may give us some help in understanding others, but because of different formative experiences, the same circumstances will provoke different responses in different people. Assuming otherwise turns out to be an obstacle to understanding. There are many other obstacles, and I'll name just a few. The first is our own filter, as I've mentioned. We can have our own beliefs or ideological commitments, moral positions, and cognitive biases that cloud our ability to see from the other's perspective and understand and appreciate them as they are. Woke psychotherapy is not immune to bringing its own filter. In fact, it is committed to it. At the same time, this also holds true for therapists who hold rigidly to their own psychological theories. The fact that we have our own needs and desires can also be an obstacle. For instance, we want to be right or validated in our understanding of the other. In the face of resistance to our interpretations, we try to persuade them or even argue. We want something from them more than we want to understand them. If what they think or feel or do does not meet our needs, we either ignore it or we argue with it. This happens all the time in our personal relationships. I don't mean to say that understanding requires a lack of boundaries or not holding others accountable for agreements or common decency. Sometimes understanding others means understanding that they are unreliable, untrustworthy, or even dangerous. But, for instance, when a therapist feels the need to recruit their client as a social activist based on critical social justice ideology, this is a major obstacle to understanding. Being aware of social injustices and inquiring into this possibility with a client can be a part of cultivating understanding, but approaching psychotherapy clients with a strong set of ideological assumptions about their experiences based on membership in an identity category and with blinders about anything else, this greatly compromises understanding. Another obstacle to understanding is language. Although it's the medium through which much understanding comes about, it can also be an obstacle. Even when speaking the same language, people lack the vocabulary to describe their experiences, and sometimes the meaning of words are not shared. We can think we understand someone because we've assumed that they mean what we think their words mean. As a therapist, I often assume instead that I'm an idiot. I ask for clarification for words that clients use to describe their experiences, such as space, depression, boredom, success, duty, discomfort, anger, and peace. The more common the word and the more likely it seems that its meaning is assumed, the more likely I am to ask about it. This generally leads to a more accurate understanding of the client. The woke are masters of having their own definitions for common words. They use words like diversity, equity, and inclusion, or anti-racism, or gender-affirming care. When you inquire into what they really mean, it is often not what you initially assumed. Not all obstacles to understanding come from the person trying to understand. I'll explain this in a minute. Another obstacle can be someone's own limited understanding of themselves. Some people have a high degree of self-awareness and are willing to share that. This makes things easier, but often people have limited self-awareness, or else, even with a high degree of self-awareness and the language to describe their experiences, many are reluctant or even refuse to share. Sometimes people even lie. When trying to understand someone, we will often be presented with their persona or a facade of appearances. They share what will create an impression of how they want to be seen and understood, not necessarily who they really are. As human beings, we have a deep longing to be seen and understood. When this happens, I dare say something almost magical happens. We feel good and comfortable in our own skin. We feel a deep connection to the human family. To be witnessed as we are is deeply gratifying. We can move through the world now without being trapped in the prison of our persona. At the same time, we have a terror of being fully seen. It poses an existential danger because we fear we might be unacceptable. We don't usually think this explicitly, but there can be the fear of being banished, abandoned, exiled, or even destroyed. It takes great courage to overcome this and reveal ourselves so that we might be seen and understood. This experience is not exclusive to those with so-called marginalized identities. I dare say, to some degree, it is universal. As we seek to understand each other at deeper levels, we should recognize this in ourselves and appreciate it in others. My job as a therapist is not just to understand my clients, but to help them to understand themselves beyond their persona. To do this, I must earn their trust so that they're willing to share. Beyond not assuming I know the meaning of the words that are used, I don't assume that I have yet heard the whole story or truth. We understand each other in layers. This means that understanding each other requires persistent curiosity while respecting the other person's readiness to share. Understanding each other is difficult. Without having the same experiences, there are further challenges, but having shared experiences is also no guarantee. Yeah, it is possible, and I have just suggested how. If we were not able to at least have a sufficient approximate understanding, we could not live together. And where we don't have understanding, we have war. Understanding is what prevents wars, whether between individuals or nations or even between the woke and the anti-woke. We can't afford to believe that it isn't possible. That's all for now. Until next time, understand and take care of yourself and each other. Hope you'll join me for the next video. Bye for now.